Lights Out by Navessa Allen is a dark romance novel published in 2024. It's not a fantasy or sci-fi story, but rather a contemporary romance where fantasy, obsession, desire, and reality are all intertwined. So let's start. Okay, so I have to be upfront with you before we start. This book is not for everyone. And I mean that in the most respectful, honest way possible. Because if you go into Lights Out expecting a conventional love story, you are going to be completely blindsided. This is a dark romance. It is morally complicated, it is psychologically intense, and it will make you feel things that you will later have questions about. Good questions. Uncomfortable questions. The kind that sit with you for days after you've finished. I've read this in essentially one sitting and spent the rest of the evening staring at my ceiling thinking what is wrong with me and why did I enjoy that so much. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had a fantasy that you would never say out loud? Something that lives in the part of your brain you don't show people, not because it's criminal but because it's yours. Dark and secret and specific, and the idea of anyone knowing about it feels more vulnerable than anything else in your life. That's where this story begins. In that exact place. In the part of a person they hide, even from themselves. Alyssa Capellucci, everyone calls her Ailey, is a trauma nurse. And I want you to actually sit with what that means for a second. Because the book does, and it matters. Ailey's entire working life is blood and crisis, and people on the worst days of their existence. She walks into an emergency room every shift, and she holds the line between chaos and order with her bare hands. She sees violence. She sees suffering. She sees people brought in broken, in ways that shouldn't be survivable. And she stays calm, because she has to. Because someone has to. Because the moment she stops being calm, people die. And then she goes home. And the silence is enormous. Because that's the thing nobody tells you about a life built around emergency. After a while, you get desensitized. Not because you're a bad person, but because your nervous system is protecting you. It turns the volume down on everything so you can keep functioning. And somewhere along the way, the volume on everything gets turned down. Joy, connection, pleasure, feeling. Ailey isn't numb by choice. She's numb by survival. Her social life has narrowed down to almost nothing. Her apartment is quiet. She exists in this strange in-between state of being completely surrounded by people at work and utterly alone everywhere else. So she does what a lot of people do when they feel that particular kind of lonely. She goes online. And that's where she finds him. The account is called the.faceless.man. He never shows his face. That's the whole thing. He's always masked, always anonymous, and yet somehow that anonymity makes him more compelling rather than less. His content is provocative and psychological, and it hits something in Ailey that she didn't know needed hitting. There's something about the mask, the anonymity, the way he moves and speaks without ever revealing himself that plugs directly into the part of her brain she keeps locked away. The part that wants danger. That finds the unknown exciting rather than terrifying. That has fantasies about losing control in a controlled way. The kind of desire that's very difficult to explain to someone who doesn't share it and makes complete visceral sense to someone who does. Ailey becomes a follower, and then a regular, and then someone who's maybe spending more time watching his content than is entirely healthy. But she doesn't examine that too closely because it's the only thing that makes her feel something real in months. And then one night, she has a few drinks, and the filter between thought and action gets very, very thin. She sends him a message, a direct message, to the faceless man she follows online, saying essentially, "Come to my house. Wear a mask." She wakes up the next morning, reads what she sent, and wants to dissolve into the floor. She figures nothing will come of it. He's got millions of followers. He probably gets weird messages every day. He'll ignore it and she'll quietly die of embarrassment alone in her apartment, and that will be the end of it. It is not the end of it. Because behind the mask is a man named Josh Hammond. Josh is a cybersecurity expert. This is important, not just as a career detail, but as a character detail. Because understanding systems, understanding how to move through digital space without being seen, understanding surveillance and access, and the architecture of privacy, that's not just his job. It's how his brain works. It's who he is. He has millions of followers. He gets messages constantly. He is not a man who is easily surprised or easily moved. And then he sees Ailey's message. And something in him goes very still in the way that things go still, right before they move quickly. He recognizes her, from her profile, from her comments, from the way she's been engaging with his content. He becomes captivated by her in a way he doesn't immediately have clean language for. And instead of ignoring the message or responding with something safe and professional, Josh starts paying attention. More than attention, actually. He finds her. Not in a general way, in a specific, detailed, intentional way. He accesses cameras. He starts watching her. Not because he wants to harm her. The book is very clear that his obsession comes from a place of fascination and something that, in his particular wiring, looks a lot like devotion. But because he is a man whose way of engaging with something he wants is to understand it completely before he ever makes a move. Is this okay? No. Objectively, legally, ethically, no. And the book doesn't ask you to pretend it is. What it asks you to do is stay in the psychological reality of who these two people are and follow what happens when two very specific kinds of broken find each other. Because Ailey isn't a passive participant in what develops. And that's what makes this story so complicated and so compelling.